The rain had begun early in that part of the country. It was as if the clouds had already woken up sad, heavy with the weight of memories that refused to dissolve. The mist gathered over the fields around the Delacroix mansion like a thick, silent blanket, muffling sounds, erasing boundaries, swallowing the horizon. Ezra watched from the west porch, a glass of wine in his hand and a silence between his lips. The damp wood of the railing, the sound of drops on slate tiles, the smell of wet earth and old leaves. It was all more familiar than any corporate boardroom, any non-disclosure agreement or glass room in Manhattan. He was back in his childhood home, or more precisely, in the grave where part of him had been buried. It had been exactly 12 days since he had disappeared from spotlight. The headlines treated him with adjectives that were increasingly far from the truth. Recluse, eccentric, missing, on the run. The truth was simpler and more devastating. He just wanted to stop feeling the world so loud. The city was pulsing too much. The noises, the demands, the eyes, all of it made him bleed inside. The Delacroix mansion was, therefore, his refuge, but also his abyss. For the first few days, Ezra walked through the rooms he remembered with almost cruel clarity. Aunt Lucille's tea room, the indoor garden where his mother grew jasmine, the attic where his father kept a gramophone playing forbidden music. But there were places that seemed to have aged on their own, deliberately moved away from him. Doors stuck, floors creaked, curtains that had been drawn for years. It was on the 13th day that everything changed. Auguste, the family's head butler for 3 generations, has brought him an unexpected document. The inventory of the property, Mr. Delacroix. Request from the legal administrator. It appears that there are discrepancies in the registration of unused wings. Ezra leafed through the pages with the disinterest of someone who already knows he will find dust and bureaucracy, until he stopped at the floor plan of the East Wing. 11 rooms, he murmured. Yes, sir. But there should be 12. Auguste approached. Maybe you're counting the sewing room twice. There are inaccurate records. Ezra shook his head. He knew this wing. He remembered running through it when he was 7. He remembered a door that always remained closed, and a housekeeper who had said in a low voice, "Some doors in the house are not for boys to open." "I will check it out myself." Auguste hesitated. "With your permission, sir, perhaps it would be best to leave this sort of curiosity to the archives." Ezra looked up. His polite tone hid fear. Real fear. Almost ancestral. "Is she still here, Auguste?" Ezra asked. The butler remained silent for 3 seconds too long. "Not everything that is forgotten ceases to exist, Mr. Delacroix." The East Wing was the coldest in the house. Even with all the fireplaces intact, it was as if the cold lived there, in the spaces between the walls, in the weave of the carpets, in the wood that never dried. Ezra walked slowly, his steps steady over the oak floor. The windows of the wing were covered with heavy moss-green curtains. No light filtered through. The air was thick. The portraits on the walls seemed to stare more than necessary. He reached the end of the corridor. 11 doors. He counted. He recounted. 11. But if you paid attention, there was something strange about the symmetry of the space. A kind of emptiness that didn't make sense. Between rooms 311 and 312, there was a wider stretch of wall, as if something was hidden behind the masonry. Ezra ran his fingers over the old wallpaper. He felt ripples. A crack. A hidden vertical line. He pushed. The wall gave way like fake skin. Behind her, an antique oval mirror, framed in dark wood and carved floral motifs, completely covered in dust, except for the center, as if someone had just touched it. Ezra wiped the glass with his shirt cuff. His reflection appeared, but distorted, tired, almost absent. Next to the mirror, a door covered with a crossed plank, 3 rusty locks and no keys. But Ezra wasn't the type to ask permission from the house. He went to the cellar and took a crowbar and pliers. It took almost an hour, but he managed to break the locks. Each click sounded like a whisper screaming no. When he pushed open the door, the dust that fell from the frame smelled of lavender and dead wood. He turned on the flashlight on his phone. The beam cut through the darkness, revealing a four-poster bed covered in white sheets, an antique dressing table, a mirror facing the wall, and an armchair by the window. But what frightened him most was the silence. Not the natural silence, but one that seemed to watch. Ezra didn't come in. Not then. She turned to leave. But before she closed the door again, she noticed something on the floor. A thin black ribbon, lying as if it had slipped from a dress. He picked it up, turned it between his fingers, inhaled the scent. It was sweet, familiar, and absurdly intimate. Ezra put the tape in his pocket. He closed the door, but as he walked away down the hallway, he noticed something even more disturbing. In the mirror outside, where he should have seen his own reflection, there was nothing. Neither does he. Neither does anyone. Just the empty hallway, as if the mirror had refused its image, or as if it was waiting for something else. The black ribbon Ezra had found on the ground seemed to carry symbolic weight, as if it were not just an object, but a trace of someone. He placed it on the desk in his personal room, but something about its texture bothered him. The fabric felt too warm, as if it had just been used. At dusk, the mansion was plunged into long shadows. The windows of the east wing seemed darker than the rest of the house, as if they absorbed the light rather than reflecting it. Ezra couldn't resist. He took a flashlight, put on a fine linen coat, and returned to room 313. As he turned the handle, the door creaked with a sound that seemed to groan with longing. Light cut through the darkness, revealing the same room as the day before, static, intact, but with a greater presence than before. The curtains fluttered slightly, even with the windows closed. The oval mirror still faced the wall. The armchair to the left of the bed remained covered with the sheet, but the bed didn't seem empty. Ezra approached slowly. The folds of the sheet had changed. They looked as if someone had sat there, or lain down, as if a body had rested. A female body. Without thinking, he reached out and touched the center of the mattress. It was hot. Ezra took a step back, his heart racing. The sound of his own blood in his ears became louder than the rain outside. "Do you see me?" he whispered. There was no answer, but at that very moment, one of the candles on the dressing table lit up by itself. Weak flame, flickering, but alive. Ezra sat on the edge of the bed, the black tape still in his pocket. He sat there for over an hour, looking at the furniture, listening to the creaks of the ancient wood, feeling that he wasn't alone. Not exactly. Then something changed. The air in the room shifted subtly, but noticeably. A change in pressure, a muffled breathing sound, and then a scent. Sweet, nocturnal, warm. It didn't come from the tape, nor from the bed. It came from the environment itself, from the air. It was the same scent as the night before, a scent that wasn't defined by floral or citrus notes. It was a scent of presence, of someone who didn't want to be forgotten. Ezra took a deep breath. He closed his eyes, and then he saw it, not with open eyes, but with memory, or with an older part of one's being. The image was vague, like a dream about to form. A woman, sitting on the edge of the bed, with long hair, skin as pale as wet paper, and a dress that seemed to be made of night itself. She looked at him. His eyes were sad, but also intense, and inexplicably intimate. Ezra reached out in the darkness of the dream. "Who are you?" And she answered, not in her ordinary voice, but in a whisper inside his mind. "You called me." Ezra woke up with his body damp with sweat. He was lying in his usual room. The morning light flooded through the windows. The sheets were twisted, as if he had been fighting something in his sleep. But the most disturbing thing was on the pillow. The tape. Double. Perfect. With the same scent as the night. As if someone had placed it there, with care, before leaving. Ezra sat up slowly. The question was simple. How did she get from room 313 to here? Or worse, was it him who left there? Or would have stayed? And what was there now? Inside that waking body, was it really Ezra? He clutched the ribbon to his chest. I felt that if I went back, I would find answers. But I also felt something deeper. The certainty that he had already returned. Not for the first time. Maybe just for the first time in this life. The tape returned to room 313 in Ezra's coat pocket. He walked like a man who knew something was waiting for him. Not out of hope, but out of realization, like someone who hears a clock ticking inside his chest and knows he is late for an appointment that was never scheduled. It was early evening. The mansion was plunged into a ceremonial silence. The only sound was that of their own footsteps on the wooden floor. Opening the bedroom door, Ezra paused for a few seconds. The room looked identical, but it was like entering a theater where the actors had not yet taken the stage, although the backstage was alive. He didn't turn on any lights. The dim glow of his cell phone's flashlight was enough. He approached the oval mirror, still facing the wall. He touched the wood of the frame carefully. It was warm, as if it had just been touched. Ezra took a deep breath, and then he turned it over. The mirror reflected the room, the bed, the armchair, the window. But Ezra didn't reflect. For a moment, he didn't understand. He moved the flashlight, raised his arm. Nothing. It was as if he didn't exist within that reflection. And then, little by little, something began to emerge on the surface of the glass, a mist, as if the mirror were breathing inward. The mist formed a blur. The blur turned into outlines, and the contours then her. Cléa. Her image appeared in the mirror as if it had always been there, hidden beneath the surface. She stared at him. Her face was tilted slightly, as if she were watching someone sleeping. Her eyes liquid, dark, luminous. There was something in her eyes that Ezra couldn't quite decipher. Not fear, not sadness. Something between longing and demand. She opened her lips, but her voice did not come out. It came out inside his head. You always come back. Ezra walked over. Who are you? You know. No, I don't. But before he finished, the mirror shook slightly. And then he spoke. Not with a human voice, but with a deep metallic, almost humid sound, as if words were being dragged from the bottom of a well. Don't remember. Feel. Ezra recoiled, his heart pounding wildly. The sound wasn't coming from outside. It was coming from inside him, from his skull, like someone was plucking invisible strings beneath his scalp. On the inner edge of the mirror, writing appeared, as if an invisible finger had traced letters in the steam. Cléa, he repeated aloud. Cléa. As he said the name, the glass became hot, as if something had been activated. Ezra put his hand down, and at that moment, he felt a hand touch his on the other side, even without a body, without form. But certainly, it was the most real touch he had received in years. Later, in the mansion's inner garden, Ezra sat beneath his mother's old oak tree. The sky was overcast, the wind whipping through the bushes, but he didn't feel cold. The black ribbon was back in his pocket. He rolled it around his fingers, repeating the name like a mantra. Cléa, Cléa, Cléa. That's when Auguste came along. Mr. Delacroix? Ezra fell silent. It's very windy. It's not safe to be outside for so long. Do you remember her, Auguste? The butler turned pale, but he did not answer. Ezra insisted. You know who I'm talking about, don't you? Auguste stared at the floor for a few seconds. Then he replied, Some women leave marks that not even time has the courage to erase. Ezra frowned. Did she exist? The old butler did not confirm, but he did not deny it either. Some rooms are not built, they are kept. And before he walked away, he simply said, If she's back, it's because you opened what no one else could. Ezra closed his eyes, and he understood that the mirror did not reflect bodies. It reflected memories that still wanted to be lived. The mansion's library was more than just a collection of old books. It was a shrine to fossilized memories. The shelves stretched from floor to ceiling in dark wood, some with iron bars, others locked with small numbered keys. It smelled of old paint, aged leather, and leaves that rustled with the slightest touch of air. Ezra went down there guided by an impulse, or rather, by an absence. The lack of information about Cléa. The day before, he had spent hours trying to find her in the family's digital archives, in genealogical records, even in old albums hidden in the attic. Nothing. Not a letter. Not a photograph. Not a note. It was as if she had been removed from history, or as if history had been written to hide it. The west wing of the library was devoted to family portraits. Great uncles, matriarchs, forgotten cousins. Men in stiff suits, women in formal dresses, distant gazes, and hands resting on symbolic objects. A book, a cup, a flower. Ezra walked down the hallway of portraits as if he were walking among tombs. Each frame contained small inscription with the name, date, and relationship to the family, until he found emptiness. A frame. No frame. Not hanging, but embedded in the wall as if it were part of the architecture. Inside it, a screen covered in black fabric. But what caught his attention was the bronze plaque just below. Custodier Anima Sepulta. Guard Buried Soul. Ezra's blood ran cold. His hands moved on their own. He slowly pulled the fabric away, as if revealing a sacred secret. And there she was, Cléa, painted with such real precision that it was like looking into an antique mirror. Dark hair, loose over her shoulders, slightly golden skin, eyes that almost came out of the canvas, and an incomplete smile, somewhere between desire and farewell. But the most disturbing thing was the background of the painting. She was not in a garden, nor in a stately room. She was sitting right in room 313. The bed, the curtains, the dressing table, everything was there. Even the oval mirror. Ezra took a step back. The inscription below the screen was almost erased, scratched with a blade. She must not be touched. But he had already touched. With his gaze, with his thought, with his desire. He took a few more steps back. He felt the weight of the painting on him, as if he were being watched from within the painting. And then the light flickered. A power outage. Quick. But when it came back on, Cléa's smile in the painting seemed bigger. Ezra spent the rest of the afternoon going through the family's old diaries. He found vague references to a woman named C, mentioned in letters from his great-grandfather. Disjointed phrases such as, "Her memory needs to be sealed." He saw too much of her. Painting is the most secure prison we can build. But never a full name, never a date of birth, not even a funeral. Cléa was a painted ghost, a presence that the family tried to erase or contain. That night, Ezra returned to room 313 with his heart racing. He carried the tape, and he held her name on his lips like a key. Cléa. The oval mirror was in the same place, but now turned to him and reflected both of them. She was behind him, in a light dress, as if she had always been waiting. "Do you remember?" she asked. Ezra tried to answer, but his voice wouldn't come out. She touched her shoulder in reflex, and then he felt, for the first time, real touch. Not a wind, not an illusion, but skin. Ezra turned around on impulse. The room was empty, but her skin bore the mark of a warm touch. And on the wall, written in steam on the glass of the mirror, was a new sentence. "If you remind me, I'll come back." The black ribbon now remained with him at all times, folded up in the inside pocket of his jacket. Sometimes he left it on the bedside table, like a reliquary. Other times, he slept with it in the palm of his closed hand, as if it could prevent him from forgetting it. The scent, however, was the most disturbing. It was not constant. It appeared at specific times, always between 3 and 3:30 in the morning, always in room 313, and more intense. On the fifth night, Ezra lay in bed in his room, his eyes fixed on the ancient ceiling, where a crack cut through the plaster like a bolt of lightning frozen in time. It was almost pitch black. Only a candle lit on the dressing table cast flickering shadows on the walls. The air was too warm for a winter night. He felt she was close. And then the perfume arrived. Not like an ordinary smell, but like an olfactory memory. A scent that triggered images in his mind. Crumpled sheets, hair wet with sweat, a muffled laugh, the feeling of a presence behind him, naked, breathing on his neck. Ezra closed his eyes. The scent was sweet and thick, a mix of night-blooming jasmine, amber, and something darker, almost metallic, as if desire had a scent. And at that moment, he saw her, not like in reflections, but in the room itself. Cléa was sitting in the armchair, cross-legged, wearing only the black ribbon, now tied like a necklace. The candle flickered. Her image flickered in the light, but it did not disappear. Ezra didn't move. Cléa watched him silently, with eyes that seemed to know every version of him, even the ones he himself had forgotten. Are you still afraid? She asked. The voice echoed in the wood, but not in the air. It seemed to vibrate right into the bone of the ear. Ezra sat up slowly. No, but I don't know what that is. This, she smiled. This is what's left of us. He frowned. Us. She stood up, her bare feet touching the ancient floor lightly. She approached. Ezra could feel her warmth. Her scent enveloped the room like a veil. Cléa stopped in front of him. She was so close that he could see the wet gleam in her eyes. You promised. She whispered. What? She touched his lips with her finger. He promised he wouldn't let me erase it. Ezra stared at her. Why do I always forget? She hesitated. Her eyes filled with an old sadness. Because there's a price to remember. Ezra brought his hand to her face, but her skin was mist, touched without resistance. She smiled, but she cried, and then the candle went out. The room was plunged into total darkness. Ezra felt the mattress dip beside him. She lay down. The warmth of the invisible body beside her was real. And then the kiss. Without seeing, just feeling. Warm, hungry lips. A kiss that seemed to cross time. Ezra groaned softly, surprised at how much his body responded. As if she knew his invisible maps. As if she had kissed him 1,000 times before. She whispered, close to his ear, "Stay with me." Ezra didn't answer. He just breathed. But when he woke up, the room was empty. The candle was intact, lit. On the bedside table, a new object. A bottle. Small. Amber glass. Almost faded inscription. Essence 17, forbidden to touch. Ezra held him. It was hot. And for an instant he knew, with the certainty of someone who recognizes the scent of his own skin. The bottle didn't hold a perfume. It held a memory. It held her. The amber bottle did not leave his hands. Ezra carried it through the halls of the mansion like a totem. He couldn't explain it, but every time he held it, he heard whispers. Not clear voices, but fragments. Broken sounds like snatches of forgotten music. He took him to Auguste. "Do you recognize this?" he asked, placing the bottle on the butler's table. Auguste turned pale as if he had seen a corpse. "Where did you find it?" "In the room." Auguste looked away. "It was a mistake to open that room, Mr. Delacroix. A mistake your mother spent her life trying to correct." Ezra leaned across the table. "What was done there, Auguste?" The old butler sighed. His eyes were moist. Mrs. Amélie Delacroix was not just a society woman. She studied the mind, the soul, the bond between desire and matter. She believed that certain emotions could be perpetuated. Ezra was silent. She believed that love, when strong enough, could break the laws of nature. And she tested it. Auguste nodded slowly. She didn't create a room. She created a field, a mirror of memory, and she trapped someone inside it. That night, Ezra returned to the East Wing, not to room 313, but to the exact spot where he had ordered no one to touch, a blank wall at the back of the structure. He called 2 trusted employees and asked them to tear down the covering. After 3 layers of plaster, brick, and wood, they found something unexpected. Stone. Dark, rough stones, fitted together like an ancient medieval wall. They did not belong to the original architecture of the house. In the stones, symbols, and between them, a triple spiral, the same symbol he had begun to see in dreams. He ran his fingers over the notches. He felt a warmth erupt from the center of the spiral. And then the voice came, not in the air, but inside the wall. "Ezra." It was her. "Cléa, you heard me." Ezra pressed his forehead against the stone. His heart was pounding. He cried without knowing why. "What is this? Where are you?" "Where I've always been. Where they left me." The stones vibrated slightly. The symbols seemed alive. Ezra closed his eyes. And then he saw a salon. A woman sitting in front of a mirror. Her mother, on the other side of the mirror. Cléa, desperate, with her hands pressed against the glass. Ezra fell to his knees. "They locked you up here because you loved me too much." The confession went through him like a blade. "That doesn't make sense." "It does. Too much desire breaks worlds." They were afraid. and they erased me. How can I take you out? Silence. Then the answer. You can remind me. Returning to his room, Ezra found the mirrors covered. All, even the smallest one, on the desk. There were fingerprints in the dust, and in the center of the full-length mirror, written in red lipstick, "If I look too long, I'll come back in one piece." Ezra took a deep breath, and in that instant he decided. He didn't want answers. He wanted her, even if it meant losing everything. Ezra stopped wearing a watch. Time, inside the mansion, no longer made sense. The day dawned in dusk with the same color on the windows, with the same silence in the corridors, with the same whispers that now seemed to emerge from the walls, as if the house breathed along with it. But it wasn't the house. It was her, Cléa. She appeared in every reflection, even outside room 313, in the mirror in the powder room, in the glass in the hallway, in the still water in the silver basin in the entrance hall, but never whole, always fragmented, always waiting for something. Ezra knew what she wanted. I knew because that was what he wanted too. Contact, not memories, not reflections, not scent, touch, skin, eyes to eyes, breathing shallowly. On the night of the 12th day, Ezra stripped himself of the veils of sanity. He entered room 313 and locked himself inside. He closed the curtains. He blew out the candles and lay down in the center of the four-poster bed. Naked, he waited. The air grew thick. The perfume arrived before her, as always. But this time, something changed. The mattress sank, not lightly, but with the exact weight of a body. Ezra opened his eyes. She was there, not in the mirror, on him. Her body, translucent but tangible. Her hair loose, falling over his chest. Her eyes wet with desire and fear. She ran her fingers over his face, and he whispered, "It shouldn't be like this, but it is." Ezra took her hand. "I want you, all of you." Cléa rested her forehead against his. "Then bring me back whole." "How?" "Open the last mirror." Ezra stepped back. "The mirror in the hall? The one my mother sealed?" She nodded. "There was where she trapped me. That's where you forgot me." Ezra woke up on the floor. There were marks on her body, soft scratches, as if nails had drawn maps of longing on her skin. But there was more. On the dressing table in room 313, a dress. The dress Cléa wore in the portrait. Folded. Scented. Ezra touched him, and then he understood. She wasn't just a memory. She was trying to come back. That afternoon, Ezra went down to the red drawing room, the oldest room in the mansion, long since sealed off. There, behind a heavy velvet curtain, he found a mirror, the size of a wall, surrounded by faded symbols, covered in dust and dried blood. Ezra hesitated. His mother had said that no one should touch him, but he had already passed the point of no return. He came closer. He touched the center of the mirror. Nothing. But little by little, the glass warmed up, and then it was seen, but not as it was. It was him younger, lighter, with Cléa by his side. They danced, laughed, kissed. The reflection was not a memory. It was another time. Ezra fell to his knees, his eyes burning. "I loved you, and I lost you." Cléa's image in the mirror raised her hand. Ezra raised his, and before touching the glass, she said, "If you want me, accept the price." "What it is?" She smiled in pain. "You will never be whole again, because a part of me will be in you, always, and you will feel it, even when you don't see me." Ezra didn't hesitate. He placed his palm against the mirror, and at that instant, the glass cracked. It didn't break, but it opened, and her voice, for the first time, came from the real world. "Ezra." The mansion fell completely silent. The servant said that Mr. Delacroix had asked not to be disturbed indefinitely, that the entire east wing be cleared, that the red drawing room be sealed with locks and black tape, that no one, absolutely no one, should approach room 313. But no one dared to ask why. Ezra no longer slept, not with his eyes closed. He slept with his body awake, with his chest open, with his eyes fixed on the mirrors. Cléa came every night, sometimes whole, sometimes broken, sometimes just a presence in the glass. But he knew she was here. On the evening of the 18th day, he put on the black linen coat he had worn at his mother's funeral. He walked to room 313 with slow steps, as if he were walking towards his own destiny. He had nothing in his hands, nothing in his pocket, just the certainty that there was no turning back. When he opened the bedroom door, the perfume enveloped him like arms. Jasmine, amber, damp wood, and skin. She was sitting up in bed, this time completely. He wore the same clothes as in the portrait, but his eyes were even more human, more alive. It wasn't a memory, it was a return. Ezra walked over. "You are real." She touched his face. "Because you remembered me. All of me." And now, she kissed him, slowly. Then she looked at him, with a sadness that only those who know time can carry. "Now you choose. To choose between living in time or living in what we create." Ezra frowned. She explained, "I can stay, but only if you stay with me. Here, in the room, in the reflection, in what we were." Ezra sat on the edge of the bed. "What if I leave? I disappear again, but this time completely." The next day, the servants knocked on the door. No answer. Inside, silence. They called Auguste. The lock broke. Room 313 was empty. The oval mirror hung on the wall, cracked in the center. The amber vial lay open on the floor. And on the bed, 2 crystal glasses. Empty, with lipstick marks on one of them, and male fingerprints on the other. But the most disturbing thing was in the full-length mirror in the red room. His image reflected something that didn't exist in the room. It showed Ezra dancing. With her. With Cléa. He smiled. She hugged him from behind. Her dress twirled with the music. The reflection moved, even though no one was there. And at night, every night, the reflection changed. They danced. They lay down. They kissed. They lived. In the mirror. Forever. Some say Ezra has gone mad. Others say he found something none of us would dare to seek. But one thing is certain. The black ribbon still appears on the pillow in room 313, from time to time. And whoever dares to enter at midnight swears to hear the following phrase, whispered close to their ear. He didn't choose the room. The room chose him.